Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really immersing ourselves in quite a specific moment in history. It's all about the intense period right after Pedro Albizu Campos returned to Puerto Rico in late 1947. He was, of course, the leader of the Nationalist Party.
That's right.
And our sources for this deep dive are pretty unique. We're looking directly at FBI surveillance reports, internal memos, intelligence files, basically from 1947 through 48. Our mission, really, is to use these files to get a handle on the perceived threat. What was the political doctrine? The, let's say, controversial rhetoric. And these alleged plots for overthrow or destruction of government right after he got back.
Yeah, and this gives you such a direct window into the government's mindset at that exact time. Campos comes back December 15th, 1947. He'd been gone, what, almost 11 years?
11 years, yeah, after that 1936 conviction.
Exactly. And the files, well, they immediately show alarm bells ringing. They label him the virtual dictator, the sole policymaker of the Nationalist Party.
Right.
So, for the federal authorities, this wasn't just some politician arriving.
Yeah.
It was the return of someone they saw as incredibly volatile.
Someone capable of mobilizing actual resistance.
Yes, potentially an armed anti-U.S. resistance. That was the fear.
And the welcome he got in San Juan seems to confirm that volatility, doesn't it? The sources describe a really big, almost theatrical event.
Oh, absolutely. Not a quiet return at all. It felt almost like a statement of intent.
Yeah.
The reports talk about thousands meeting him right at the pier.
Wow.
Cars with loudspeakers driving around shouting slogans, liberty, independence. But the detail that really jumped out to the federal observers, the thing noted immediately.
It's the uniformed cadets.
The uniformed cadets, these black-shirted cadets of the Liberating Army, about 40 of them, 2 lines, right outside the dock, like an honor guard, and that visible display, that organized military-style group. Well, for the FBI, that was the first major red flag. It showed the party wasn't just talk. It seemed operational, ready.
That really sets the scene. Okay, before we dive into his actual words, his rhetoric, let's quickly touch on the background the FBI had on Campos himself. They were pretty meticulous about categorizing people back then.
Oh, they were. The files note he was born in Ponce, 1891, and they used the classification at the time identifying him as mulatto. Now, that wasn't just biography. It was part of how surveillance agencies operated then, defining and tracking political figures. It's complex, his identity, but his background was, quite elite in some ways.
Harvard law degree, right?
Harvard LLB, yes. And he'd served in World War I as a first lieutenant.
In a segregated unit, the files note.
In a Negro regiment, yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So you have this WWI veteran, Harvard-educated, now leading what the FBI clearly sees as a revolutionary movement.
Wow.
What was the core idea driving it? Why the need for armed action, in his view?
The foundation of everything for Campos was rejecting the U.S. presence right back to 1898. He saw the American invasion as completely invalid, null and void, historically speaking.
So not something to negotiate within, but something to overturn.
Exactly. Sovereignty wasn't something the U.S. Congress could grant. He believed Puerto Rico already possessed it. It just needed to be, quote, rescued or reclaimed immediately.
Which leaves zero room for compromise, really.
None. And he immediately turned that philosophy into action items, commands to the people, a doctrine of total non-cooperation right out of the gate.
Okay, so what specifically did he tell people not to do? What were those commands?
Well, in speeches across late 47 and early 48, the message was clear and hit right at U.S. authority. 3 main points. First, don't participate in insular elections, local elections, because doing so, in his view, legitimized the occupation.
Okay, that makes sense within his framework. What's next?
Second, refuse to pay taxes, federal and insular taxes.
Right. Starve the beast, so to speak.
And third, this was crucial, do not comply with selective service laws. Don't register for the draft. Don't bear arms for the United States.
Whoa, okay, let's just pause there. That's more than a boycott. That's telling people to directly defy federal law on a massive scale if everyone did that.
The whole system jams.
And never.
Precisely. It was civil disobedience, but with this undercurrent, this preparation for, well, defense. And as you mentioned, he quickly ramped up the military angle, especially on the selective service part.
He didn't just say, don't register. There was that quote from the Ponce speech, March 48, about what to do to people who did cooperate with draft boards.
Ah, yes. That's the quote that really solidified the FBI's focus on conspiracy. He said, and they recorded it, anyone who presents himself to serve in a recruiting board should be shot if necessary.
God, if necessary.
And he added, you must speak very clearly to those people. So it moved beyond just rhetoric into what the FBI saw as explicit threats. incitement to violence against collaborators.
But it wasn't just about military or political structures. He framed it in cultural terms, too, right? This idea of U.S. despotism attacking Puerto Rican identity.
Absolutely. He connected the political control directly to a cultural assault. He argued the U.S. had been trying for 50 years to, quote, destroy our culture.
What was the mechanism he pointed to?
Primarily education. The compulsory teaching in English in public schools, he called it the mutilation of the mentality of Puerto Rican children.
So language is a tool of control.
Yes. He saw it as proof that America wanted Puerto Ricans to be just instruments, compliant tools of U.S. policy, stripped of their own national identity and thought.
And this kind of cultural warfare talk, it wasn't happening in a vacuum. It had a history tied to actual violence. The FBI files make that link explicitly, don't they? They track the Nationalist Party's past actions.
That's critical context, yes.
Yeah.
This wasn't just some new debating society. The Liberating Army of the Republic, the group the cadets belonged to, that dated back to the early 1930s.
The enforcement arm.
Essentially, yes. The physical expression of the political doctrine and the federal files. They specifically point back to earlier deadly clashes, the 1935 Rio Piedras massacre, the 1937 Ponce massacre.
Right.
But the difference in 1948, the thing that really raised the threat level for the FBI, was the immediate visible reorganization. The uniformed presence of those cadets right when he returned.
So not just history, but the revival of those 30s paramilitary tactics right now.
Exactly. That's how they saw it.
Okay, and central to all this ideology was citizenship. The Jones Act had granted U.S. citizenship. How did Campos deal with that? What did he tell people about it?
He rejected it.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, he argued the Jones Act citizenship was a subjugated citizenship, a second-class status imposed by a colonizer.
So not real citizenship in his eyes.
Not authentic Puerto Rican nationality.
Yeah.
For him, renouncing that U.S. citizenship was step one, a non-negotiable prerequisite for any meaningful political action, for reclaiming true nationality.
A matter of honor.
Honor and duty, yes. And that rejection, that cleared the path, ideologically, for the call to arms. That's when he says things like, each man and woman in Puerto Rico must offer to clutch a rifle, a dagger, or a pistol to defend the independence of his children.
Strong words. Clearly inflammatory. But the government knew, I assume, that prosecuting based on speeches alone could be difficult. Which brings us to those conspiracy files open in early 48. Did the FBI find concrete evidence of actual planning beyond the rhetoric?
They certainly believe they did, and this is where the informants become really key. You see memos from March 1948 stating flatly that reliable and highly confidential informants were reporting Campos was actively undertaking to formulate plans for an island-wide armed revolt.
An island-wide revolt? When?
The timeline they reported was in 3 or 4 months, and the reports specify the Nationalist Party was rapidly rebuilding its military side, the Liberating Army.
Okay, what specifics were the informants feeding back? What did this rebuilding look like on the ground?
It looked like military preparation.
Yeah.
Purely focused on that. Informants confirmed meetings, multiple ones, March, April 48. Places like Ponce, Cabo Rojo.
And what happened at these meetings?
Nationalist cadets in uniform were seen drilling, parading, practicing maneuvers. The reports even give numbers. One mentions 92 uniformed cadets at that Ponce meeting in March.
92? That's not insignificant.
Not at all. And beyond the drilling, intelligence came in that local leaders, especially around Mayaguez, were actively accumulating weapons.
What kind of weapons?
Rifles and revolvers, specifically mentioned in the reports, gathering arms for this planned action.
Okay, that definitely sounds like a paramilitary buildup.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier this idea of a dual strategy, the muscle on the island, but maybe a political angle abroad. Did surveillance pick up anything about international connections?
Yes, and this really shows the, maybe sophistication is the word. The FBI wasn't just watching people drill. They tracked communications, too. They documented a phone call made either by Campos or someone for him from Cabo Rojo, early April 48. The call went to a Miss Thelma Mielke in New York City.
And who was she?
She was the Nationalist Party's official observer at the United Nations.
Ah, okay. So while cadets are drilling with rifles in Puerto Rico, they're also maintaining a presence, a voice at the UN in New York.
Exactly. It points to a deliberate, two-pronged approach. You have the potential for radical armed action on the island, maybe to force a crisis.
Right.
But simultaneously, you're building diplomatic leverage, a propaganda channel, internationally. So if violence did erupt, it wouldn't just be seen as a local crime problem.
It could be framed immediately as a colonial struggle on the world stage.
That seems to be the strategy they were tracking, the muscle and the mind working together.
And the government's reaction, it sounds like it was swift and very focused once these reports started coming in.
Immediate. They opened a brand new file. The title says it all. Pedro Albizu Campos, Overthrow or Destruction of Government, period.
So the investigation pivoted.
Completely. The laser focus now was get enough evidence for prosecution, build a case.
Why the urgency? Were they expecting something specific?
They feared it could blow up spontaneously. They worried the nationalists might react violently to any federal attempt to enforce laws, especially the draft, the selective service mandates. So they needed hard proof, beyond just the speeches, that Campos's current actions and rhetoric met the standard for, well, subversive activity that led to his conviction in 1936.
To prove an active conspiracy to overthrow the government by force.
That was the goal, demonstrating a clear violation of federal law.
Okay, so stepping back from the details, what's the big takeaway for you, the listener, when you dig into these raw intelligence files from that moment?
For me, the key thing is seeing the sheer intensity, the rapid acceleration towards potential conflict in just those first few months of 1948. These sources show you a major political movement, the nationalists, actively gearing up for armed conflict. You see it happening, driven by this charismatic leader demanding total rejection, institutional, cultural, everything of U.S. authority.
Yeah.
It's a raw, internal view of how the federal government saw and reacted to a revolutionary independence movement in real time. The specific plotting allegations, the military organization, even the diplomatic moves, it's all laid out.
And for us today, I think the relevance is also seeing the mechanics of surveillance back then. Physical tales, these reliable informants, detailed phone logs.
Right. Which brings us to our final thought, something maybe a bit unsettling to consider. These FBI files, they have meticulous logs of evidence. They list things they acquired as proof, including, get this, Hatron recorder tapes.
Hatron tapes, like actual audio recordings.
Yeah, contemporary magnetic recordings. They captured Campos's actual voice, his radio speeches, press conferences, his delivery. Plus, they had original photographs of the uniformed cadets, real primary source material.
Wow. That's incredible evidence.
It was. But the inventory sheets in these files, they reveal something else. A lot of this raw sensory evidence, the actual sound recordings, the original photos, was destroyed years later.
Destroyed? When?
Often you see the disposition date marked as April 9th, 1958, years after the fact.
Huh.
So the provocative thought for you is this. When the direct evidence, the sound of the leader's voice, the actual images of his followers from such a charged, contentious moment, when that's intentionally erased from the record, what does that do?
What's the impact on historical memory? On our ability to really feel the tension, the atmosphere of that specific time?
Exactly. Something to think about, especially when we consider what parts of history get preserved and what parts disappear.